Grisly crimes from past. Advertisement of death. The voice on the telephone was smooth, fluent and persuasive, and instantly Josephine Backshall was cocooned in a web of friendly familiarity. She knew the caller's voice well and had been longing for him to ring. After all, he was helping her to earn £100, a big enough sum of pin money to make a world of difference to the family budget. There was nothing in the least shady about the job as a part-time model that Josephine was beginning to enjoy. In fact, the thought that the small advertisement she had placed in the local paper could be misconstrued in anything like an unseemly light had never crossed the mind of the house-proud 39-year-old mother of three who sang for the local church choir and was a leader of the town's brownie troupe. And the idea that there could be anything sinister about the man who answered her advertisement and in a trial session had photographed her on the front lawn of the family's tidy, middle-class, semi-detached home in Malden, Essex would have seemed too outrageous to contemplate. The man, she told her husband Mike, seemed like a good sort, and as he spoke to him again on the phone, she realized what he was offering her would be her biggest job so far. £100 for a day's work probably, she thought, modeling for something no more glamorous than a cheap cosmetic firm. The caller talked on, cool, collected, giving the impression of a very pleasant personality. A meeting was arranged for the evening, and after kissing her husband goodbye, she walked through the front door of their spruce home for the last time. 3 days later, at about 12 noon on Friday, 1st of November 1974, she was found strangled to death. Her body had been dumped in a shallow pond by the side of a lonely lover's lane. Her hands were bound in front of her with a length of cord strapped tightly to her wrist. An identical cord was lashed to her neck. Josephine Backshall, the charge-going good neighbor who enjoyed an innocent life of simple pleasures, was killed because she put her faith in a confidence trickster. She trusted a mystery man whose identity the police have spent more than 100,000 man-hours trying to discover, with not a single clue to put them on the trail of a quarry whose disappearance has made the Josephine Backshall case one of the Britain's most perplexing unsolved crimes. No fewer than 40 detectives were assigned to the case in the first year of one of the biggest yet most baffling investigations of its kind. More than 19,000 members of the public were interviewed. All of them had either the Christian name of Peter or Dave, or the surname of Thompson or Johnson. It was a combination of those names that fitted the clues that Josephine had given her family and friends. It was to them that she had spoken of the man with the camera who was setting her up not as she believed as a part-time model, but a victim of a brutal murder, even the motive for which has never been established. Thousands of car registration plates were later painstakingly checked and rechecked by police, trying to find the killer's car, possibly a blue Ford, which was seen pulling away from the Fountain Public House in Good Easter, Essex, on the night Josephine kept her fateful rendezvous with her killer. Detectives established that Josephine and the man she so easily trusted did stop for a drink, 1/2 pint of beer each, at the fountain about an hour after she had left her home. She was presumed to have picked her up nearby and taken her there after a business dinner at a Chinese restaurant, an assumption based on the fact that forensic experts discovered the remains of Chinese food in her stomach. Publican's wife Joan Jones became the last witness to the rendezvous of a killer and his victim when she saw the couple in the Fountain Saloon bar. "I caught only a fleeting glance of him," she says. "He was a tall man. His head touched a line of beer mugs hanging over the bar. He never actually seemed to face me, and on reflection, it seemed almost as though he was trying to not let anyone get too close a look at him." Mrs. Jones identified Josephine from a cinefilm containing family holiday shots which detectives showed her. "I remembered her at once," she says. "She was an attractive woman. She had sat in the corner of the bar with the man and had seemed totally at her ease. For months, police kept details of the fountain meeting secret in the hope that the killer would retrace his steps. It was a forlorn hope. The only other potential lead detectives had to go on was a French connection. A keen-eyed policewoman found a cosmetic sample in Josephine's bedroom, which was one of a very limited batch which had been imported from France prior to a sales drive. Could the killer, detectives pondered, have been using Josephine to model this new range? Inquiries again, however, came to naught, as did a scrupulous check on every photographic studio in both England and France from which a killer might have been tempted by Josephine's original advertisement, which read, "Lady, late 30s, 6 part-time employment, own transport, anything considered, previous experience banking, able to type." Underneath was her home telephone number. It was the sort of advertisement often used to skirt the law as a method of offering sex for sale. A senior officer on the case later described it as positively naive. He added, "We all know what the phrase anything considered is taken to mean. The great irony and tragedy of this case is that any innuendo couldn't have been farther from the truth. Mrs. Backshall was a God-fearing woman, and that sort of interpretation of her advert simply wouldn't have occurred to her. It seems more than likely that her own innocence, a rare attribute in this day and age, may have tragically led her to set herself up as a victim of murder." Another senior officers have described the Josephine Backshall case as the most frustrating they have ever worked on. But as far as has been possible, they have managed to piece together this diary of death. A few days after Josephine placed her ad, a male caller telephoned to offer her work modeling for cosmetics. An appointment was made for a week later, 15 miles from Josephine's home at Witham, Essex. The man never showed up. He phoned the following day, rearranged the appointment, and again failed to appear. 2 weeks later, the phone rang once more, and Josephine happily arranged yet another meeting. This time, the couple did meet. The photographer took a series of pictures of Josephine on the front lawn of her home during the day. By that stage, Josephine's husband has begun to believe her part-time job would come to nothing and ironically expressed mild doubt as to the authenticity of the cameraman who was promising his wife tidy sums for what seemed simple work. Josephine allayed those fears, saying that the man seemed perfectly genuine and indeed a good sort. The telephone rang once again on Tuesday 29th October 1974, and the last fateful meeting was arranged. Josephine left the family home in Norfolk Close, Malden, at about 6 p.m. Driving to Witham in her red Ford Cortina, registration number BVW 374L. Detectives have established that she was seen at Witham's Collingwood Road car park between 6:30 and 7 p.m. A passerby told them her car may have broken down because he saw her looking into the engine with the bonnet raised close to the car park entrance. Sometime before 7 p.m., however, she must have met her killer. There is a time gap between then and 3 days later, when the telephone line worker made the gruesome discovery of her body in the ditch at Bury Green on the Essex and Hertfordshire border. The killer had left no clue behind. Chief Superintendent Jack Mulder, who still keeps the Josephine Backshall case file open, can only say, someone, somewhere, must know him. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and leave a comment as it helps with YouTube algorithm to grow this channel. I regularly upload, so by subscribing, you will be notified of new materials. You will find similar contents in my other videos. Have a safe day. Signing off.